Hi guys, this is MattStar102 and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this dwarf in a jar. So the things you'll need to make this will be a jar, most importantly, some sculpted clay or an oven baked clay of some kind, assortment of paints, super glue, PVA glue, a little wire to connect the head to the body a bit more easily, some fake grass so you can apply it to the base, and some felt to stop it from scratching at the bottom. Some additional tools that you might need are brushes and a cutting blade, and if you are going to use a cutting blade, make sure you've got a cutting mat down so as not to wreck the furniture. So the first thing you need to do is to remove any stickers or labels off of the jar. If there are any paper labels, you can do this by soaking it in warm water for a bit and scraping it off with a sponge. This is a sticker so it comes off straight away, but any additional inks that aren't on labels or on stickers or anything like that can be either washed off with a sponge or can be removed with like nail polish remover or some kind of acetone. Some sort of paint thinner usually gets the ink off. After that, you need to look at your lid. Now it should have a rim on the outside now where the glass lies. Now where that glass lies is the barrier that you have to build on top on. Anything outside that line will end up stopping the lid from going on to the jar basically. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you have a clear indication of where you need to build on top on. And after that, all you got to do is build some sort of platform so it raises it slightly from the lip. This will make sure that anything that you build on top of it, like the figure I'm going to do in here, is more visible. And then you start work on the figure. Now the figure that I did here, I did it twice in the oven. Mainly because of this is because there were so many tiny details I had to go on it, like the horns and the belt and the strap and the buckle and stuff like that. So I made the base and the figure out of Sculpey, and then you put it in the oven at, I believe it was about 130 degrees. Yeah, it was 130 for about 15 minutes. And then after that you take it out and you leave it to cool, and by that time it's hardened and ready for paint. One thing to note as well, that with the head and the body I used a little bit of wire to make sure that the head was properly secured to the body. And then you add the details to the figure. This is done again using Sculpey, and then because like I said earlier Sculpey can be baked again, I did the same thing by putting it in the oven. Because the bits were only slightly thinner than the previous ones, I only put it in for about 10 minutes because the stuff that I was putting on was really small and really thin to make sure that it didn't burn it. And here is what the figure looked like with the details added. Now all I had to do was where the beard connected to the face, you could really tell where the beard had been connected on. So I used the razor blade to thin out the clay so it looked a bit more flush and it made it look like the beard was part of the face. Now we'll be gluing this figure on later to the base, so what you need to do is to sand ever so slightly the top of the base and the bottom of the feet to make sure that when you glue it on there's a very flat surface so the glue can take hold of as much of the figure as possible. Now I didn't think about this before, but I realised that I wanted the dwarf to actually be physically holding the pickaxe, and for the handle I used a skewer, which you usually use for kebabs and stuff. So I used that, cut it to size, and then realised because I wanted it to go through the arm, I slowly carved out a hole that went all the way through the arm and sanded the skewer down ever so slightly so it made it thinner so it would actually fit into the arm of the figure. And then after that you paint it. Now as you can see the base that I've done I've painted brown. This is to make sure that the fake grass that I'm going to put on it later, if any other clay shows underneath it and any part of the grass that falls off, you'll actually see dirt sort of showing up underneath it so it won't really matter so much. I paint the base and the dwarf separately so I can sort of move it around and make sure it's all painted properly rather than gluing it together and then painting it. I can just make sure that all the paint is properly covering each part as necessary. Now the types of paints that I'm using here are a mixture of just normal acrylic paints and Games Workshop paints. The main reason why is just because of the size of the parts, so it's nothing special really. And then I glued the pick head to the actual handle of the pick. So I used this using super glue. It comes with a accelerator, which I sprayed onto one part and then put the glue on top of another part, and it really sped up like the drying time. I mean, like, it glued within like a couple of seconds, so that really helped to make sure that there was a fast bond and it stayed in place properly. Now, in the same way that I glued the pick to the top and the bottom, I used the same to glue the figure to the actual base. And because we sanded it earlier, we made sure that plenty of the foot coverage was actually touching onto the base, so it gave a much stronger bond. And then it was time to add the grass. I did this by getting some PVA glue, watering it down and completely lathering the entire base, and then applying the fake grass. And then I left it overnight. You can just leave it just for a couple of minutes just to soak in and then just dust it off. But I just left it overnight. Now the final thing you have to do is the jar lid. You can do this if you really want to, but this is the thing that I did that just made it look sort of finished. So I painted the lid black around the edges and on the bottom, and then you add a circle of felt and you glue it onto the base. I used orange for this just to match his beard and just to make it look a bit more different than just having solid black. You can choose whichever colour you want, and that's pretty much it. You've just made a dwarf in a jar. Well, I did anyway. You can make anything pretty much as long as it's sort of in the confines of sort of being small, so you can keep it within a jar. You can use plenty of different shapes of jars, and I'm sure you could use bottles as well. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.